We went on our first Alaska cruise 2 years ago, and we are in the midst of planning and preparing to do it again. And these are the things that I wish I knew before my very first Alaska cruise. Hi there, I'm Ilana from the website lifewellcruise.com. Welcome back to my channel. Now, maybe this is your very first cruise and it's going to be Alaska, or maybe you've been on a cruise before in the Mediterranean or in the Caribbean. This is going to be a very different experience. And one thing I can promise you is that once you cruise to Alaska, you're probably going to want to do it again and again. And honestly, that was the very first thing that did surprise me. But in this video, I'm going to share with you 12 things I wish I knew before my Alaska cruise, along with some tips, tricks, and even a few mistakes to avoid. Now, before I get started, I did want to mention that if you like this video, if you find it helpful, informative, or enjoyable in any way, then please do give this video a big thumbs up. I really do appreciate it. And please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Let's get started. Number one, the shore excursions in Alaska. So I really have some thoughts about these. Firstly, Alaska excursions are going to be generally more expensive, so just get prepared for that. However, it doesn't mean that you actually need to do an excursion in every single cruise port. Now, there definitely are enough things to do, and we enjoyed all of our excursions. However, in hindsight, I realized that I could have balanced out some of my excursions by doing an excursion in one port that maybe is a little bit more expensive and doing something on my own in another. So as an example, for Ketchikan, it is a great port to walk around. There is Creek Street. It is very interesting. You can also go and eat lunch at somewhere local. You can go and visit one of the museums or even just hang around in the Totem Pole Park. It really is very enjoyable even if you don't do an excursion. And the same thing can be said for Skagway. We did do an excursion in the morning. I did love it. I'll share that more with you a little bit later. But in the afternoon, we walked around and we went for lunch in the old gold rush town, so to speak, and it was really very enjoyable. Now, in Juneau, we did do a whale watching tour. We really did enjoy it. However, other people that were on our cruise ship went to Mendenhall Glacier, which is something you may want to include as part of your excursion when you are in Juneau. However, it is pretty easy to go on your own to Mendenhall Glacier and to walk along one of the trails. Now, you are going to want to book your excursions early, especially those ones that really do mean a little bit more to you. Now, whale watching was something I really wanted to do, but by the time we got around to booking our excursions, which was still a few weeks before our trip, quite a lot of the whale watching excursions were sold out. So that's something to note. I would definitely do that. Now, if you're somebody who wants to do one of the helicopter or the plane rides that even go up and do like a dog sledding, these are quite pricey, but if you decide to splurge on that, make sure that you do this early as well. Number two, a balcony is absolutely worth it in Alaska. Now, I like a balcony no matter what cruise I am on. However, I'm really not opposed to any type of cabin that you can afford. We have cruised in inside cabins and ocean views, and I would be absolutely willing to do that if it's the only way that I was able to cruise. So no worries at all. But in Alaska in particular, I think that we actually used our balcony more than in any other itinerary. And by the way, it was a little bit cool during the time that we sailed. We sailed in sort of early May, so it was the cooler time of year, but somehow the scenery was so breathtaking. We spent a lot of time either sitting on our balcony or even standing on our balcony, just taking in the ever-changing scenery and the wildlife. And this was something that really did surprise me as well, was the fact that all the time we saw something. So whether it was, the mountains, or whether it was seals or otters that were either on the rocks or on buoys, or even whales that at one point as we were sailing actually were following our cruise ship, there was always something to see. And if we didn't have that balcony in our cabin, I think we would have missed out. Number three, the days are very long and very bright. Now, personally, I really like that, although I will warn you, it is going to mess with your sleep a little bit. So one thing to do is bring a sleep mask, or at least consider that. I think that is a good idea because the sun rises very early and you're going to have sun until maybe, or brightness at least, until like 11 o'clock at night, sometimes even a little bit later, depending on when you sail. But that is something that's nice as well. Going back to the balcony, if you have a balcony, you're going to find that you could use your balcony early in the morning, maybe bring a thermal mug and have your coffee out on the balcony, or, you know, pick up some hot chocolate or something, or even have room service breakfast out on the balcony. But even like in the evening time after dinner or after a show, you can go outside and you can actually see some of the scenery. It really is magnificent. Number 4, the cruise ship is equally as important as the destination. Now, in contrast to maybe when you go on a Caribbean cruise, sometimes the cruise ship is actually the destination, all the cool things to do on board. And while that doesn't mean that's not true in Alaska, it's actually the days that you spend in port, or in Glacier Bay, or in Hubbard Glacier, or even just sailing and you see that ever-changing scenery and the wildlife, that is really going to play a huge part in your cruise. Now, sometimes people ask, what is the best cruise ship or cruise line to go to Alaska? And there really is no one best, because the experience on the ship, well, that's going to differ from one person to the other as to what is important to you. So you do have to balance that out to make that choice. We cruised with Holland America, absolutely loved it. We're hoping to cruise with Princess, and we think that we'll probably enjoy that based on a lot of what I've seen so far. But other cruise lines do a great job too. And if you're looking for certain activities on the cruise ship for young children, that is something to think about. Now, I am curious, and I'd love to hear from you. If you've cruised to Alaska before, or even if you are cruising to Alaska soon, which cruise line or cruise ship are you sailing with? Please let me know down in the comments below. Number 5, take advantage of the educational or the enrichment activities on the cruise ship. Now, this is nothing that I would have ever really thought about before going on my Alaska cruise, because normally on sea days, I pretty much relax at the pool, or I do a variety of different things, but I don't really think about those enrichment seminars, those talks. But in Alaska, you may find that your cruise ship brings on national park rangers or local experts, or even just has some specific activities that have to do with Alaska. And this really does make the time on the cruise ship even better. So be sure to check your cruise line app or your daily planner to make sure that you schedule those activities in. Now, by the way, if you're planning your Alaska cruise and you are trying to keep organized and make sure that you don't forget a thing, I do have the Life Well Cruised Ultimate Cruise Planner. Now, the Life Well Cruised Ultimate Cruise Planner is a 47-page downloadable printable cruise planner that will help you with packing lists, shore excursion planning forms, cruise outfit planning forms, cruise budget planning forms, and more. Plus, you can print out only the pages you want for as many cruises as you go on. Now, if you are interested in seeing what's included in the Life Well Cruise Ultimate Cruise Planner, I'll leave all of the information linked down below in the description of this video in case you do want to check it out. Number 6, expect rain. A lot of times people say, what should I pack for an Alaska cruise? And what will the weather be like when I go to Alaska? Well, Alaska weather is unpredictable. And by the way, I live in Montreal, Canada, and our weather tends to be a little bit unpredictable in the summertime. So I absolutely know this. And it still surprised me that when we went to Alaska, from one day to the other, you just didn't 100% know. But the one thing that I will say is that you can expect rain in Alaska, in particular in Ketchikan, as there is a lot of rain that falls there. Now, in our experience, it isn't necessarily a very heavy rain. So a light rain jacket and maybe a poncho, these are both good things to have with you. Even if the morning starts off pretty clear, just have one of those in your backpack. Number 7, what to wear? Well, you always hear people say, pack with layers in mind. I didn't even know what this meant before, but now I absolutely do. So this is definitely something to think about, because the weather can change. The morning time can be very cool and then it can get warmer later, or we'll talk about the glacier days in a minute, but that's something to plan for as well. So what is a layer? T-shirt, long sleeve shirt or fleece, and then an additional sweater. Consider a vest and maybe even a puffer coat. And obviously this is going to depend on the time of year. The early part of the season, so, you know, in May or so, is going to be cooler than it's going to be in July or August. And the later part of the season so towards the end of September and October, are going to be cooler still. Now, along with that light rain jacket, some other things that you'll want to make sure that you have are comfortable shoes. Honestly, that is the most important thing. Alaska is a very casual cruise, and even the cruise ports, it is very casual. So you don't have to feel like you have to make any big fashion statements. Dress in leggings, in jeans, just in comfortable wear that you can walk around in. Number 8, plan what to wear for your Glacier days. So the Glacier days, honestly, this ended up being, we were in Glacier Bay. This ended up being one of the best days of my cruise. And I expected the day in Glacier Bay to be sort of like a glorified sea day. But no, it was so much more. It was really an experience of its own. So I have a few tips for this along with what to wear. So firstly, get out early. This is a really big day. Typically, you're going to have park rangers on board, or you're going to have some sort of orientation about this day. The cruise ship may open up the bow. This is a really good place to see the glacier, but there are going to be other good spots on the ship as well. So you want to scope that out early. Now, I do suggest bring a thermal mug on your cruise. Now, we ended up just buying one on our cruise ship because it was so handy to have on this cruise, but you can, put your coffee in there, your hot chocolate or whatever. You're going to want to have that with you all day when you're in Glacier Bay. Make sure that you do have a hat and you do have gloves. Now, I'll leave a link, by the way, to my absolute favorite gloves. These are thin, but still warm enough. And what's really good is they're touch screen gloves. So when you are using your phone to take photos or even maybe to text somebody, but mostly to take photos and videos probably, well, you don't have to take off your gloves to do this. Now, I know it surprises a lot of people, the fact that even if you go in summer, the days that you spend in the glacier area, that is going to be much cooler. And I found, like, at home, I pretty much never wear a hat at home, but I was so glad I had it in Alaska because the air does tend to be fresher and cooler, especially if you go whale watching and you're out on the open sea, and when you're in Glacier Bay or Hubbard Glacier or any of the other glaciers as well. Now, speaking of gear, something that you absolutely want to bring are binoculars. This is an absolute must, and travel binoculars are fine. Obviously, the better binoculars you get, the further that you're going to see. But I have a very standard pair of binoculars. Again, I will leave that link down below in the description of this video. They're very reasonably priced and they worked quite well. Now, normally I would not say to bring a camera on any other cruise because typically, a good iPhone or a good smartphone is going to have a pretty good camera, but this is one place if you are a little bit of an amateur photographer, or even if you want to take up a little bit of photography, this is one place you will not regret bringing your better camera and zoom lens. And 2 other things to bring that I think a lot of people don't think about is, first of all, sunglasses. It is very bright in Alaska. The reflection off the water and off the snow and the ice. Definitely bring your polarized sunglasses, very important. And the other thing is bug spray. So in particular, if you're going like from June on, you want to bring that bug spray as soon as you go off onto any of the trails. And that's included in a lot of different excursions. You will definitely want to have this. Number 10, eat off the cruise ship. Now, we really wanted to, when we were in Juneau, we really wanted to go eat at Tracy's Crab Shack, but unfortunately, the timing of our excursion just didn't make it possible. But that is something that I want to do when we head back to Alaska. Now, there are a lot of local restaurants, and this is something that is different from a lot of other places near the cruise port. Typically, you might think that they're just too touristy and they won't be really good, but something that I learned are pretty much local and often family owned. Now, the restaurant that we did go to was in Skagway. It was the Skagway Brewery. It was definitely very good. And something pretty unique here is they have a lot of local beer, including the Spruce Tip Ale, which is actually made from the spruce tree. Oh, a little bit of an extra tip, something that I didn't do at the time, but I will definitely do now, is bring some wipes with you. And it could just be like makeup wipes or something like that, but to actually wash your hands. Now, disinfectant as well for your hands and Kleenex, but something that we found is, well, one of our excursions, it was dog sledding. And this was great, by the way. It wasn't dog sledding on ice. It was on sort of the dirt. Absolutely loved this experience. But something that I realized is after the dog sledding, you don't really have a place to go wash your hands. And of course, you can still wash your hands in a bathroom somewhere. But I really did kind of want to wash my hands, but it's not always easy to find. So those are things that I would definitely bring with me, especially if I was heading anywhere to eat. Also, bring a large Ziploc or even a couple of large resealable bags. If it does start to rain, you will have your backpack, but what you'll want to do is make sure that you do have a place that if you need to keep your electronics dry or any other items dry, that you can do that even in your backpack. Souvenirs to bring home. There are a lot of great souvenirs to buy in Alaska, but some things to look for though, so that you are getting something that is actually locally made, is to look for that it says made in Alaska or Alaska native owned. Now you'll find beautiful local art, including photography, and some other things that you can take home, which are pretty unique, are salmon and crab, and they can actually freeze that and ship it to you back home. Now the other souvenir that you might want to bring home is the ulu knife. And I always thought knives are not allowed to go on cruise ships in cruise ports of call. And of course, typically they aren't. However, when I did check Royal Caribbean's website, and I'm assuming it's the same on other cruise line websites, I will check this, but when I checked, there is an exception for these ulu knives that you do pick up in the Alaskan ports. Now you can bring this on the ship, but Royal Caribbean does point out that this does need to be stored in your cabin. Number 12, and I'm pretty glad that I actually did do this on my last Alaska cruise, arrive at least 2 days before. Now, normally I say arrive 1 day before your cruise, and that is still true. If that's all you can do that, because you don't want the cruise ship to leave without you if there's a snag in your flight or anything else. But 2 days before actually gives you a little bit more time to acclimate to the time change, because for many people, there is going to be a time change of 3 or even 4 hours. Now, the other thing is, in our case, we left from Vancouver. So our cruise actually departed from Vancouver and then returned to Vancouver rather than Seattle. Now, when it comes to Vancouver, first of all, even though I am Canadian, I had never been to Vancouver. And honestly, I wish I had gone earlier in my life. Vancouver was absolutely incredible. We spent 3 days there. I don't regret it. It is absolutely worth it for anybody to go. So enjoyable. But the other thing that you should know about Vancouver is the cruise port. Well, it is a little bit of a challenge to get on to the cruise ship in terms of the time that it's going to take. Just be prepared for that. Typically, it's an hour to even an hour and a half to board. It could be a little bit better. So if you think the worst and it's better, then wonderful. But it is much more similar to when you go through security at the airport and customs, so just be prepared for that. And for anybody who is wondering, what hotel did we stay in? We stayed at the Pan Pacific, which is right on site with the cruise port, which definitely does make it easier when you are going to the cruise terminal, the fact that you are right in that hotel. But there are a lot of other hotels that are going to be great too. Now, I will leave my Alaska playlist at the end of this video. That is going to include what to do in Vancouver, what to pack for Alaska, as well as our cruise review and vlog. Now, I'm going to leave all of the information about the LifeWell Cruise Ultimate Cruise Planner linked down below in the description of this video, but I'd love to hear from you. Please let me know, when is your upcoming Alaska cruise? And as well, please let me know if you have a tip or trick or even something that absolutely surprised you about your Alaska cruise. Please leave it down in the comments below. I know it helps other people. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do give it a big thumbs up. I really do appreciate it. And please subscribe if you haven't done so already. Bye for now and happy cruising.